observes that there is no enough new notes in circulation. And in fact, the banks, ATMs that should be dispensing new notes are still dispensing only the old notes. And citizens still have a lot of old notes that they are unable to deposit in the banks. And right now, there are uncontrollable queues in several states in the country. The Senate notes that experiences around the world have shown that such abrupt decisions with no control has been planned by the CBN, created chaos, and plunged the economies into crisis. A very good case is India. However, in countries that operate with order, as seen in the United Kingdom, new notes are currently in circulation and they are running smoothly along with the old currencies. The Senate.
Mr. President, one wonders whether many of these appointees that head agencies of government are aware that the National Assembly, especially the Senate, play a major role in the appointment, which is a privilege given to us by the Constitution. Mr. President, before I proceed, I will refer us to the CBN Act, Section 8 of the CBN Act. And after that, I make my few comments. Section 8.1 says this. The governor and deputy governor shall be persons of recognized financial experience and shall be appointed by the president, subject to the confirmation by the Senate. I stop there. Now, if we go to Section 4, the governor shall appear before the National Assembly at semi-annual hearings, as specified in paragraph B, regarding, paragraph B says, on the economic development and prospect for the future, described in the report, required in Section 5A of the section. But let me also read A. Efforts, activities, objectives, and plans of the board with monetary policies. It will appear semi-annually and give that. Now, if you go to Section 5, it says this. The governor shall from time to time, B, make a formal report and presentation on the activities of the bank and the performance of the economy to the relevant committees of the National Assembly. Mr. President, I am making reference to this to say that the National Assembly, especially the Senate, has equal commitment as compared to the presidency that appointed him, because we gave the confirmation. And if we gave it the confirmation, the law says that periodically you should update us on the activities of this place. And then there is a major activities at the central bank now affecting old Naira notes that are being replaced by new Naira notes. And the Senate, which represents the interest of all Nigerians, we have seen that Nigerians are complaining about the short notice given to them for the deadline for the use of the old currency. Mr. President, and if we move a motion here on that note and then communicated to the governor of the central bank, I think that the onus lies on him as a matter of urgency to seek or look for our leadership if he has any difficulty to discuss with them, and which our leaders may likely come back to us or tell us, or appear before us and tell us why our resolution will have a negative economic program for the nation. None of these things have been done. Meanwhile, he is compelled to even brief us on the activities of the bank. Now, we have not gotten that brief, and then he's not also respecting our motion. Mr. President, I think we should frown at it, seriously. Because we are taking things so easily with many persons, many leaders of different agencies. They are not taking us so serious. We represent the Nigerians here. And we are speaking for the Nigerians. So, Mr. President, we will compel him. Let's bring a clause that will compel him to extend the deadline for the next 6 months. Because our people who are in the rural areas don't have access to the new note. Even those of us who are here, the other day I went to an ATM machine, I put in my DC about 3 days ago, it gave me old notes. I'm supposed to take new notes, but I still receive old notes. The people have sent their old note to the bank. When they go back to the bank,
I think you need to round up.
They are
please.
still taking, they are still receiving old notes. We don't agree with it. Mr. President, we should put a clause to compel him to extend the deadline to July 31st. Thank you, Mr. President.
And I make bold to say, I know for myself that maybe if you talk to the senators in this chamber, maybe nobody has more than 20,000 of the old notes in his possession at the moment. I certainly don't have a single one of the old Naira notes in my possession. So, Mr. President, I was in my constituency over the last 3-4 days, and I can tell you between Saturday and Sunday, in fact, from Friday, the kind of confusion that is in the rural areas in respect to this change of currency. First of all the banks in my area are now inundated. The queues are spilling out onto the streets. There is not a single ATM machine that is dispensing this new note in my constituency. And in fact, Mr. President, let's look at the breakdown. We're talking of my state has only about 33 banks. In the whole bring out, and what we are talking about, Mr. President, is essentially people with about 20 to 25,000 naira in old notes, which is the total amount that they possess. When this policy was announced, the idea was that there were billions of naira being hoarded by politicians, by big people, by crooks, who will now find it difficult to bring it back and change it. So that by the time the deadline arises, we'll have a huge pile of cash and will have punished recalcitrant, Naira holders and so on and so forth. This was the same, just like the motion of that. This was the same thing in India. In India, when they convinced the Prime Minister to do this, they told him that 47% of the currency was held by mafia, by crooks, by this, and that by the time they finish the deadline, all that money will be trapped. At the end of the exercise, 99.7% of the currency ended up in the banking system, and they did not arrest anybody. It will be interesting now to find out, who, because Central Bank has so far said they have recovered about 1.3 trillion of cash. Who have they arrested? The money we are talking about, the direct impact, Mr. President, is on the smallholder. I passed through Gujungu market, which is the largest weekly market we have in Jigawa State. And when you are coming to Gujungu, Mr. President, I'm sure you are aware, you have to either make a diversion.
Distinguished colleagues, please, let's listen to our colleague in silence. Go ahead, please.
Because of the sheer amount of transactions and the trucks, people bringing in their livestock and selling, on Sunday I passed through Gujungu without incident, Mr. President. Less than 30% of the normal trade was taking place. Why? Because they had already given an announcement, including by the largest wholesale market in the northwest, or maybe probably in the north part of Kantunkwari in Kano. They announced that as of Friday, they are not taking the old currency again. This was what sent people into a panic. And I said it here when we were arguing that what typically happens is that weeks or even months before the extension, people will start to say, we're not taking it anymore. So CBN's deadline of 31st is essentially in our market started last week. And you find queues of people, like I said, Mr. President, if you talk to the 300 people lining up to change, nobody has more than 50,000 naira. But the instructive thing is that that is all the money they possess in this world. So, Mr. President, I think we should go beyond the technicalities and the statistics being churned out by CBN and appeal to the central bank governor to have an extension. It's not because the whole essence, if we are focusing on just putting the deadline, is that we are now saying, yes, we want to be punitive, just like he said when he announced the policy. We are trying to catch people who have hoarded money. I can assure you, Mr. President, anybody that had 10 billion naira in cash as at that point in time has changed it. The people that, when we see it happening every day, people that have taken this money, they change it to dollars. One person changed 109 billion naira that he sold to dollars. That's what's pushing up the exchange rate. So forget catching any big man. The problem is with the smallholder, with our small traders, who now, because what it's going to do is going to affect general commerce in the country. India lost 1.7% of its GDP because there's simply money. You stop Keke Napep now, he will ask you, do you have new money? If you don't have new money, you have to wait. So he loses his business because out of 20 passengers, maybe one person will have the new notes. People are stranded, they cannot engage in commerce, they cannot engage in legitimate trade because all of a sudden this panic has set in. So, Mr. President, I support this motion in its entirety, and I hope that the CBN governor will see reason. Thank you very much.
Ably moved by Sadiq Umar. Mr. President, it is unrealistic to insist that 31st January should be the deadline, because right now the banks don't have the currency, don't have the new currency. Only yesterday, I went to the bank to withdraw 300,000 Naira. And I was given old notes. I said, look, I want to use this money beyond 31st January. And they said they don't have the new currency. So if it can happen to me, certainly it will happen to millions of Nigerians. So, not only that, Mr. President, from the report we got, not up to 60% of the currency, old currency, is now in the banking sector, which means more than 40% of the old currency is still in circulation. And if you insist on 31st of January, it means people are going to lose their money. Right now in rural areas, they don't accept the old currency. It is no longer legal tender, despite the fact that we have a week to the deadline. So it entails a lot of difficulties for people living in rural areas. I received a lot of calls from my constituency saying that if we don't extend the deadline, people are going to lose so much money. Because of the lack of new currency, people have resorted to buying grains. There is panic buying everywhere. So we should go beyond resolutions. I support what Senator George Sikibo said. We should invite the CBN governor and have serious discussion with him and tell him the implications of insisting on 31st January as deadline. So, my dear colleagues, this policy is going to inflict a lot of suffering to the people in rural areas. And I want us to really extend the deadline to even June 30th this year. I so support Mr. President.
Senator Adam Bulkacho.
Rise to support this motion. I would like to share the information I got yesterday from my own constituency, where I have 7 local governments, and only 1 local government has banks. All the other 6, there is no single bank in those local governments. So they called me and said they are wondering what the federal government or the central bank is trying to do to them. Because they said some of them have been keeping some of their old money in their homes so that they use it to trade in local markets. Every day of the week, there is a market holding. So they said now that people don't accept old currency, and they brought their money, their old currency, to the only bank in the constituency, which is in Azare, and the queue is just unbearable. In fact, I spoke to the manager of that branch, that bank branch, and he said they have been staying in the bank up to 12 to 1 a.m. because people bring in their money and they cannot just take it, they have to count. And after counting, they have to write the normal receipts and deposit that money. And he says some of them, they couldn't accept. They have to ask them to return the following day. And many of them complain, what if armed robbers come to challenge them and take away the money? So this situation is becoming really desperate for my people, the people in my own constituency. And I believe my ears didn't tell me lies when I heard that Yobe State Governor has made a special appeal for Yobe only to be given extension, which I thought is maybe he didn't consult you, that's why. Otherwise, he should have told you so that the whole National Assembly could rise to the occasion. So, Mr. Chairman, while I support this, I don't believe we should just stop at passing resolution, which we did 2 weeks or so ago, and the central bank ignored it. I think we must devise something to force the central bank to extend this. Otherwise, there will be chaos in our constituencies. Thank you.
Before I call Senator Ibrahim, we should go beyond our resolutions. Then it means we have to have bills. Because to change laws will be compelling when laws are passed. You can push for the resolutions to be respected, but resolutions cannot take the powers and authority of laws. So we can push for our resolutions to be respected, but if we want to bring what I think is forceful, then we have to look at the laws existing or come up with new laws. Senator Olorogbe.
Having family assembly resolve and say to provide for a constitution for the purpose of promoting the good government and welfare of all persons in our country on the principle of freedom, equality and justice, and for the purpose of consolidating the unity of Nigeria. Mr. President, I want to read also Constitution Section 4, which speaks about the power of the National Assembly. And 4 subsection 3 says the power of the National Assembly to make laws for the peace, order, and good government of the nation with respect to any matter, including the executive legislative list, so safe as otherwise provided in the Constitution to the exclusion of the National Assembly of the state. And the National Assembly, under Section 2, shall have power to make laws for the peace, order, and good government of the Federation or any part thereof. Mr. President, I went to quote Constitution because this matter was discussed on the 28th of December, and we passed a resolution, as you said. We are coming back now to pass another resolution. I think we need to go in terms of compelling. If there is a need, the 2 chambers may have to pass a law, because these issues will not be, if it is retained by the central bank as it is, will not be in line with the constitutional provision of us making laws for good government, welfare and order, peace and order. Already there are disorderliness happening based on the presentation made by people here. Our people that we represent here as parliament, as a result of the people, they are suffering. They are not able to go to the market. They are not able to use money. Money is very important. That means there will be people who cannot buy food to eat, who cannot pay for hospitals because that money is not being accepted again. So we are here to ensure there is welfare for our people, there is order and there is peace. To prevent disorderliness, to prevent chaos, we need to go beyond just another resolution, which in 1 week's time may not be followed. Especially, Mr. President, this parliament may be going on recess because of campaign. And if we leave it, it means except we recall ourselves, we will not be able to enforce what we are doing. So I therefore want to say that we either have 1 or 2 options. One, Mr. President, is to convert this motion into a short sentence bill that we compel the central bank to do, and we pass concurrently with the House of Rep, and ensure that even if the president is not assenting, we can override. So for the first time in this country, we'll be seen to be serious. Because the central bank governor that we invited that does not answer us, that we pass a resolution that does not respect the resolution of the 2 chambers, because House of Rep passed a resolution. It means we have to use all the powers we have to ensure that that is complied with. Otherwise, We are not doing what the Constitution asks us to do. This is what I want to present. I'm not going to speak because all has been said affect everybody. I represent a constituency that even is the capital. But I have two local governments that are rural. Those two local governments have no banks. So it means even from the beginning, we did it. The central bank did not look at the structure of this country to see how, because at the beginning when this issue was discussed here, they said they will set up some agencies. These are not happening in the rural area. Our people are suffering. So we need to go beyond the solution. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Samuel.
It's very timely. We have 7 days to the deadline. But, Mr. President, I just want to remind you about the powers of that office, your office. It's not about you. It's about the Senate. This Senate represents the people of Nigeria. And the CBN, without the people of Nigeria, will there be CBN? There won't be CBN. And about the laws that you are talking about and our resolutions. Our resolutions must be respected. The law of the CBN Act, even though this CBN Act was not enacted by this National Assembly, but the powers of amending it and reenacting it is with this National Assembly. So if you can make the law and you ask somebody to go and implement that law, and he has problem in implementing that law, the right person to tell him how to do or go about it is this body. So we have an oversight responsibility constitutionally on the National Assembly, on the bank, and that includes what we are talking about now. Mr. President, we should not make it look as if we are begging the CBN to extend the date. No, we should order the CBN to extend the date, because that is what the people want. That this democracy is government of the people, for the people.
Senator Alimdume.
Yes, sir.
Let me remind you that because we want debating this motion, and I know the weight of my responsibility, and I know that all of us here know the weight of our responsibility. Every one of us here is concerned about this. This is the second time we are taking the motion, and if there is anything we can do, is to ensure that this program is extended. So we will be looking at how do we deal with this. And this is, somebody was suggesting the Senate and the House should have concurrence, because the House also had the same or similar motion. Will that be the way out, or is it going to the President? But one thing is, let's do what we are supposed to do to ensure that this program is extended. And whatever we do, we should do so within what this Parliament, whatever it is. So let's explore the possibilities.
If this is your decision, it is the decision of the Senate. I'm not asking us to go too far, but if we are to go, you as the Senate President, if we resolve now that we should adjourn for 30 minutes and you call the CBN governor to come before you and explain this situation, we have that powers. But we are not going that far, and I'm not suggesting same. I agree with you. But what I want to emphasize is that it is not only the power that you have, but the powers of this Senate as defined in the Constitution should not be played down. And that is why people feel that they can play around or personalize or do things the way they feel. It should be according to the law. And the law we are talking about is this law that is made by the National Assembly. In democracy, Mr. President, that we are copying in America, for example, the Senate President is the Vice President. In our own case, you are the third person. If, for example, you say, we ask you now to call the Senate, the CBN governor to come now before we close to explain this, you have the powers. And this situation that we find ourselves looking at the way it is going may require that going to that far. If not, our people will suffer, Mr. President. You rightly said it now that in your senatorial district there are only 2 functional banks. And Gashua people or the Bade people or thereabout, they are known for trading in small and they keep their money in their houses. And the worst thing is, it is not about changing this money. The new notes are not available. They are not available. The first and the last time I saw the new note was from the distinguished Senator Olujumi. She showed me the note. I have been withdrawing from the bank ever since, but they have never given me one single new note. So you should stand firm on this on behalf of the Senate and the National Assembly. It doesn't even require that you go and talk to the Speaker and all that. The Senate President you have the power and this thing from the senators, as we are saying now.
Okay, thank you very much for reminding me. But let me say that it's not everything.
Our Committee on Banking and Finance should have been very much in tune with this policy when it was coming up. They should have interacted with the CBN. They should have, a lot of the issues that are being raised here probably should have been raised and then probably brought to the floor of the Senate. But having said that, I think I do agree with a lot of my colleagues that the money is not readily available. Where you see them now is at parties and a lot of functions where monies are being sold. These new notes are being sold. And I think even from the cursory investigation that I have done, I found that this policy had been in the CBN books for a while. And even a lot of people in the CBN were caught off guard because they did not anticipate it was going to be moved fast-tracked this early. So I think there's a need for us to take a look at this and look at how to elevate the sufferings and the necessary rush that this may bring up, especially towards the latter part of this week. Another issue that I see that is happening right now is this issue of withdrawal of limits. Now, all kinds of spurious bank accounts are being used within the banks. The bankers are now turning this into a money-making opportunity, using different corporate accounts for people to enable them to get money out and charging. So, these are policies that we need to have looked at and to have anticipated what are the repercussions of this. So, while you are trying to block one loophole for criminality, another one is being opened up and is being given to other people. So I think there's a need for us to take a look at this, and I think I agree with a lot of people that we may need to look at this deadline and probably give some additional time for people to have the necessary funds that they need.
We should immediately extend the use of all notes by 6 months from January 31st, 2023 to July 31st, 2023.